Okay, guys, so what we're going to be doing today is starting to understand the scale of our model and what it means for rendering. Okay, so you'll notice that um, a lot of the studies that you ever see, if you're trying to do like tutorials and stuff online in Maxwell for Rhino, they usually use a small scale application, something like a human-sized object or something that sits on a table or something like that. And it's because at that scale you can see the small differences in lighting conditions a lot better than you can on the global scale, or essentially the size of a building or even larger, like we did in the first exercise. It's much simpler to do that kind of lighting. The other thing is it's valuable to look at things in a smaller scale because you can, generally speaking, render out much better quality of light and get sort of a different quality of image using the Maxwell features because Maxwell renders as close to real light as possible. So, the best preface for where we're heading with this next part of this class is essentially this, or at least just for today, right? This is an image of a photo shoot, and I just pulled it off of Google, nothing special. But what I want you to pay attention to is that it's not just one light, right? And we're now going to start looking at our architecture as an object, something to be seen by a person in a small space, right? So we're going to have to figure out how do we light it and frame it and accentuate certain features of this object, similar to the way that you would if you were a photographer. Moving on from this, we're going to be creating lights, but we're also going to be creating lights that create good quality light. So the next thing I wanted to show you real quick is this nifty little thing. And it's really just a table lamp, but it's a pretty special table lamp. This is a fluorescent incandescent light combination. So how many of you know the difference between a fluorescent and incandescent light? Okay. Well, a fluorescent light is what you see up here, right? It's generally a white or blue light. It's something that is not very natural. And an incandescent light is like what you would see in a lamp that you have on your end table next to your bed, right? It's a little bit yellower and warmer. It's also not quite as intensely bright, right? Although it can be, it depends on the wattage. The reason they create lamps like this as a combo is because it creates a more real world style of lighting condition when you use the two together. It's also far easier on the eyes, and so it's really popular nowadays. It's starting to become a lot more popular to use fluorescence and incandescence together in concert so that you can get good quality light throughout. So here in our model, what we're going to be doing is looking at this thing as a small object. What that means is once you get to a certain point developing your model and you need to create a render off of it, you now need to scale it down, which it kind of presents like a file management problem because you don't want to be modeling in 1/8 scale. You don't want to have to do the math and figure out, well, what is 1/8 scale of 20 feet, right, for everything that you want to model. So it kind of goes back to what I was showing you with the sections, where every time you need to make a render, you might want to take your file and just save it off, or potentially make a copy of your file to the side and then just scale it down. So that's kind of what I'm going to do here. I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to scale it down. That one is on the right. Yeah, that one. Okay. But in doing so, you kind of need to think about what scale it's going to be. And I'm not just saying just scale it down to make it small. I'm saying scale it down to make it precisely what you would model it at, right? Because now we're kind of moving into that sort of clinical study phase of this model where we're essentially representing this thing as a model, which means it has a particular 1/8 or 1/4 inch scale or whatever it's going to be. So I mentioned to you that your floor-to-floor height should be 15 feet, right? I think is what I said. So think of it, I mean, the easy way to do this is if you have 1/8 scale, right? 15 feet, so how many eighths are in are in that, right? So so if it's 15 feet, it's going to be 1 inch and 7/8. Does that make sense? For every inch, it's 8/8 of an inch. You guys got that? It's simple math, but it's one of those things that every time you have to do it, you have to stop and stop thinking about your other things and just make sure you did it right and double check yourself. It's very easy to mess up scale. So with Rhino, we can select the object. I'm going to get kind of under it so I can really see these lines here. Actually, I'll just do it from the side. It's easier this way. I'll select the object like that, and remember when it depends on, make sure you're measuring where you did your offset surface from, whether you went out or in matters. If you need to double check yourself, turn on project and then do a distance command, and you can go from the bottom to the top, and so it'll tell you what that is. So mine is 15 feet there. Similarly, I'm going to grab this and then do the scale command, but I'm not going to do like scale 1D or scale 2D, right? This time I want the whole thing to shrink down. So just the scale command is fine, and I'm going to, well, if I do it with project on, it's going to pull me back. Let me show you what it's going to do with project on. So I'm going to go from here and up to there. That creates my 2 reference points, and then I just type in the new value. So some of you are AutoCAD users, but it works a little different than AutoCAD, where you have to turn it into a reference scale. This one starts off as a reference scale. So I'm going to say 1, whoops, sorry about that, scale here to here, 1.875. You'll get used to typing that out, or you could just have a calculator on the side and just do 7 divided by 8, and that's what you'll get. So this is what happens if you scale with project on and your object is somewhere off in space. It will actually scale down in the direction of the work plane that you are in. Okay, so be careful about that. So I need to turn project off, and I'm actually just going to do it right here on the side of my object from these object snaps. So I'll say scale, go from any one of these origin points, say right here, to right there, and then 1.875. There we go. Zoom select will be helpful. So now I have my 1/8 inch scale model, and I'm pretty much ready to go, starting to set up my studio environment. What questions do you have? Nothing special yet, right? All right.